Good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday, January 29th, 2013. This is Capital Conversations, and I'm Marty Owings. Welcome to the program. All right, I'd like to welcome in two lawmakers tonight representing the Democrats. DFL is Representative John Persell, a House member in his third term, and you hail from Bemidji, right?
Correct, yeah.
That's the mighty 5th district, I think, right?
Yep, the 5A part of the 5th district,
okay.
Right. The east end. I'm sorry, the west end of it, I'm sorry.
Well, east-west. It's up there anyway.
It's all
I don't think
over
people can
that
tell
district
when they get up there.
Yeah.
And then, of course, old friend of the programs, Representative Steve Drazkowski. He's a Republican. What, are you in your 6th term, Representative
No, I
Drazkowski?
would give it maybe 4th, Marty.
Is it 4th term? It
Yeah,
seems
third and
longer
a half.
to a lot of
yeah,
Democrats.
Third and a half. I was in a special election.
Right. So that's right, special election. That's right. And District 21B, and that's Mazeppa.
Correct, southeast Minnesota.
Good hockey in Mazeppa?
This time of year,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, even out on the river.
Well, welcome to you both, and thanks for being on the program. As always, we invite you, the viewer, to join us on the show and participate proactively. You can send us a tweet at MNCap News or drop us a Facebook message on Facebook at Minnesota Capital Conversations. If you have an interesting question you would like to ask our guest tonight, we'll take it on the air. Well, let's get started. The governor dropped it last week. It was the big budget. I don't know how many pages it is, but I think it's a lot. And it's getting a lot of reaction from both the GOP and the DFL. Let's start with you, Representative Persell. What about the GOP's reaction to some of the content in the governor's proposal, especially business to business, tax on clothing, things that the GOP say could drive business from the state? What are your reactions to that?
Well, first of all, it is a big document, and I think we need to take our time and look through it pretty hard. The thing I know for sure, and I'll try and respond to the I guess the Republican response part of it, but I'm convinced that we need to do something to have revenue be part of the picture as well as cuts that we've been doing in government as far as budgeting. So, let's look and see what the sales tax is going to bring us and evaluate all of that. I dare say that no matter where we try and go find revenue, somebody's going to holler about it. I mean, that's just the way it is. But this is designed to focus around working folks and middle class and try and maintain some sense of neutrality there with regard to how much of the budget that middle class taxpayers are going to be having to pay, and bring some fairness to it. So I think the governor's off to a reasonable start here with this budget. A lot to be determined yet.
Well, Representative Drazkowski, that does not seem like the take that your party has, especially regarding middle class. Now, maybe you guys haven't read the whole budget, but the GOP is tweeting like they've read the whole budget, because I've seen just a constant stream of, I won't call them expletive-laden reactions to the governor's budget, but pretty negative about, his budget proposals, especially how it would impact business. Where are you coming from?
Well, I thought I read it as over 2,000 pages. I haven't read every page either, but the high lines for me were enough to make me wince as we look at trying to keep jobs in the state of Minnesota. And it's really a problematic budget, not only from the message that it's bringing forward relative to what we really see, but really the fundamental change in direction. In the last 2 years, Marty, we've been going in a direction, one that aims to be fiscally responsible, to live within our means, and make that work for government like it does for families and businesses. This is completely taking the car, taking it out of drive and shifting it into neutral and beginning to go backwards on that. It is one that says, you know what, the governor, let's be real here. He wants to increase spending dramatically. $2.7 billion over the baseline, or $3.7 billion over actual from the current biennium, and increase taxes by, the Democrats will call it revenue, and they'll say we are investing. But the reality is, they're going to increase taxation on Minnesotans by $3.7 billion, and $2.1 billion out of that $3.7 billion in the next biennium is on sales taxes, one of the most regressive taxes. So here we've had the mantra of let's tax the rich and be fair to everybody else. The reality is they're doing it under the guise of taxing the rich, and they're taxing the working people and the middle class in this state.
Well, let me come back to something you said, though, about that fairness issue. Now, the government, and to be fair, I'm talking about the governor, he said that, you know, we're going to, no more shifts and gimmicks. We're going to start paying back these school shifts that have been going on under both Republican and now Democrat-led, you know, legislatures. What's your reaction to that, the school shifts? I mean, isn't it high time we paid that back? Wouldn't that be fiscally responsible?
Oh, it definitely is. And, you know, as a matter of fact, let's review history here. In the 2009 and 10 legislature, controlled by the Democrats, they borrowed $1.9 billion. The Republican-controlled legislature last session, last 2 years, borrowed another $760 million. So about $2.7 billion were borrowed over those two bienniums under two different leaderships in the legislature. Through the reforms that happened the last 2 years, were able to demonstrate some fiscal responsibility that actually spent less than we had originally budgeted, and we used that savings and spending to pay down well over half of that combined $2.4 billion. So we're headed in the right direction. And what does the governor do in this budget? Instead of paying down the debts owed, shifts it out and sends it out again to 2016, I think 2017, before that education shift is paid off in his budget. You talk about gimmickry, there it is.
What about that, Representative Persell? Is it more shifts and gimmicks, smoke and mirrors? What do we got?
Listening, and I think maybe perhaps why it's taken me a while to get my arms around the governor's budget is I was looking out there for that surplus that the Republicans were talking about here last campaign season, and I'm wondering where that surplus is, but it seems to have gone away. Representative Drazkowski is absolutely correct in that there has been borrowing and shifting going on, and it's been going on and cutting going on for 8 or 10 years since before I was here. And we end up in a conundrum where we cannot deliver services that we need to deliver to our local governments, payment in lieu of tax, all of these things that we believe in as Minnesotans. And I think that the governor's approach here is honest. We know we have to raise taxes. We know we have to raise taxes. I remember answering a question in a campaign forum this last fall, and somebody says, "Oh, you Democrats, you're going to go raise taxes." You know, I think we are. Somebody's got to run this state. Somebody has to be responsible for all of the needs that we have here in Minnesota and sort this out. We have to have fire departments and police departments, and we have to have responsible natural resource management. So I think the governor's approach is responsible in the sense that we have some revenue raised, we have some cutting that's going on, a balance, at least there's a balanced approach. We've had in the last 8 or 10 years a lot of cutting and shifting, but nobody has made much of an effort to raise any revenue to even keep up with inflation. And I tell you what, my school districts up north are just crying for anything to keep up with the inflation, for diesel for the buses. I mean, just simple things that we need for our public schools.
I want to get to you in a second, Representative Drazkowski, but I just want to challenge you on that a little bit, Representative Persell. Now, hang on now, because the Democrats, right, I mean, they were part of this too. See, it wasn't just the
I don't think I said that we weren't.
You didn't, right, but here's the thing, right, so you had these proposals come forward, and the governor, you know, is telling you, okay, we're going to make this thing fair, we're going to maybe raise some tax or whatever. The Republicans were saying last session, we've already got things on autopilot set to increase automatically. And we needed to address that. Otherwise, our budget grows. So when you say to the people, we've got a budget, we can't sustain it without growing and I don't want to argue for the Republicans here, but just plain looking at the numbers, I can see there's a problem with the growth of government versus the income, and that can change based on the economy. I'll give you that. But why tax to sustain growth versus just need, you know?
Well, let's look at what we've done as far as taxing over the last 8 or 10 years. How much have property taxes gone up around the state? There's been a shift going on. We cut down here, property taxes go up. Ask anybody out there.
Yeah.
Property taxes go up. It's being made up. It just...
You're going to get it some places.
That's exactly right. At least the governor is being upfront and saying we need more revenue, and I agree. We need more revenue. And when you look at where that three-legged stool, I'm sure you've seen this, Representative Drazkowski, that Commissioner Franz has used that analogy, and it's correct. We've gone way overboard. The income and property are paying more than the sales tax by significant portions. So let's get back to some balance there. And the governor's proposing to cut the sales tax rate. 5.5, he's gonna cut that sales tax rate. He's just gonna broaden that base a little bit. Let's have a good debate about what that's gonna do. I'm all for that.
Yeah, well.
I think we've got a good debate to start on.
Well, your reactions to that?
I don't know where to start, Marty, but you know,
he threw you a lot of targets.
Well, you know, let's remember that the autopilot increase that is expected to happen in the next biennium is $1.1 billion. The government on autopilot will increase according to the baseline budget. That wasn't enough for the governor, though. He wanted to go additional $2.7 billion above there and raise it the $3.7 billion in taxes in order to cover it. This is about unbridled spending. This is about unprecedented spending, and that's what's dictating the plan. Now, looking at the plan itself, you know, if you're looking at sales tax increases, well, and that's the way it's been sold. We're going to drop the rate from 6.875 down to 5.5, and guess what? That's a decrease. Well, the reality is we're collecting over $2.1 billion more in sales taxes from Minnesotans by broadening that base out and requiring them to pay more on merchandise, on clothing, over $100, on business-to-business services that are going to be very detrimental to our businesses in Minnesota. And I know it. I'm along the border of Wisconsin. I've heard from retailers already that are telling me, you know what? We have people doing bulk purchases at our stores in Minnesota from miles away in Wisconsin that are going to say, you know what? It doesn't pay for us to come there anymore. The reason we are coming there is because you don't have sales tax on your clothing. This is going to be detrimental to jobs in Minnesota. It's the wrong direction.
Their constituents are all coming over to buy guns. It's the Obama gun rush.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It's beer, beer and cheese. No, they like to. Representative Persell, I can't help think that the folks out there wonder if the, you know, gimmicks and all that's just the same. It's just wearing a different jersey. You know, tell me, you know, the governor's had this rare opportunity to differentiate himself fundamentally, and to his credit, he stuck to what he said he was going to do. He said he was going to try to make the tax system more fair, more equitable, so that the rich are paying their fair share. How do you explain to folks at home when they just see this as kind of just another shift, taxing? He's going to lower it in one place and raise it in another. Is there anything in this governor's budget that differentiates it, that really addresses the core fundamental problems of our budget?
Well, I certainly see it as different than anything that has happened in the last 2 sessions that I've been here. Absolutely. I mean, I don't think anybody's talking about borrowing any money, and that's been a bane of the legislature, as I am given to understand. I mean, we can't borrow our way out, and shifting. Well, let's take a good hard look at what's going on. I don't think there's any significant shifts going on. I want to get to know this more of what's being proposed, but as being straightforward, that new revenue, new taxes are being proposed because we know we've got to have more revenue to meet some of the needs, or the property taxes are going to keep going up at the local level. So we've got to address that somehow, and I think we have the opportunity to have the debate now and really look at what the governor's put out.
Well, last before we have to wrap up here, Representative Drazkowski, you talked about the the most regressive kind of tax. Well, I couldn't help, you know, some of our viewers have responded, and we've heard from others about this $500 per homeowner rebate. Does that apply to people who make $250,000 or $1 million and own a home as much as it does the $30,000 or $40,000 earner? Because that doesn't seem very targeted. It seems like a bludgeon when a scalpel might have been needed.
Well, I think it does, and you know, it's the governor with his budget. It's some people have called it really almost a sham, because what you're doing is the governor.
Well, no one on his team's
well, on our team we have.
Yeah.
What you're seeing is him extracting millions of dollars out of one pocket and putting some money back in the other, and telling them that they're getting tax relief. And at the same time, this is not a balanced proposal. It's $3.7 billion in tax increases, and was sold to us as $225 million in cuts, $3.7 billion in increases of taxes, $225 million in cuts, which actually were lowered today, I guess, to $175 million.
Right, I saw that news.
22 times more tax increases than cuts in this budget. That's not balanced.
I want to give him one chance. What about Representative Persell's point, Representative Drazkowski, that it's more fair? It's not borrowing like it was, like we were borrowing before this budget.
Well, we're on a path. We're on a path. If we just stayed on the path we've been on for the last 2 years, and we spent the same amount the next biennium we did this biennium, there's an increase in revenue projected to come in. We could take that revenue, plow it in, and pay off the education shift without more spending, without more taxing.
Won't that help neither case, Representative Persell?
You know, I think we're on a path to make this, and with the governor's budget, but we've been the balanced approach thing. We've been doing nothing but cutting for my time here and since before that. And when I ran, I said we need a balanced approach. That to me meant we need to have balance in how we approach the subject of budgeting. And we're now considering revenue, and we're considering cuts. And we've done a lot of cutting in recent years. So I think we do have a balanced approach. It may not be dollar for dollar, and I don't think we'll ever get to that.
Yeah.
But we're considering revenue and cuts, and we don't have the borrowing as part of the equation, because I think that costing us a lot of money down the road. The tobacco funds are costing us a significant amount of money, half a $500 million.
Well, that's all we have time for tonight, gentlemen. I want to thank you both for your time tonight and your thoughts on this governor's budget and all the happenings up here at the Capitol. I know that you two will continue to be engaged, and we'll watch for you as the legislative session moves on. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Marty.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back with Brianna Birschbach from Politics in Minnesota, Sarah Janicek, and Mitch Berg, political blogger, to break down all of the action at the Capitol this week, right after this.